Eastern Time. And wherever you are joining us from, we welcome you. This is the third installment of Morning Coffee with
And I
Shonda
have my
Buchanan.
tea.
Oh, that's right, T. And I have my coffee, although it is a little bit after 1 and Eastern Time. So we welcome everybody. Today, we are down in the documents. We're looking at what the documents tell us. And I am your host, Nichelle Calhoun. And of course,
I'm the co-host, Shonda Buchanan.
yes. So we're excited today because we have a special guest, Karen White of the Afro-American Historical Association of Fauquier County. I've mentioned AAHA in the past, and there she is. There's Miss Karen White. Do you
Welcome,
want to say
Karen.
hello there?
Hello, all.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're in good company today because literally we have the best. We have the experts of looking through documents that illuminate Black lives in past centuries and past times. So Shonda and Karen are going to guide us in their journey and share some of the documents that will help you on your journey, okay? So we just welcome you. We want to actually give some shout outs to our different platforms. First of all, I want to give a shout out to I Love Ancestry. All right, so they're the platform.
Adrian.
They're the platform that you're watching this on. We want to welcome our AAHA family that is based in Fauquier County, but we know spread out through Virginia and the DMV. So we want to welcome them. We want to welcome all of our fans of Shonda Buchanan, of course, right? And we want everybody. Today you're not IG living today.
I thought about that. I was like, I probably should.
It gets complicated, so
Yeah.
it gets complicated. It's better to keep it simple sometimes. And also fans of Perpetual Blackness, my family and friends, and Mother Earth Sanctuary out of Minnesota. So we want to give shout outs to everyone there. At the end, we'll share all of our social media handles so you can keep in contact with us if you have further questions. But before we even get that far, I'm just going to recommend that you have a notebook and that you have a pen or pencil or a laptop so that you can jot down these notes, because if you've ever started a genealogy journey, then you know it can be a little bit intimidating if you don't know where to start. And we have experts helping you to start. So you definitely want to be prepared for that. I am grateful to be asking the questions to guide our discussion alongside Ms. Buchanan. And I think you're going to get a lot of inspiration from the answers from both of them today. So
Yeah.
welcome.
It's going to be fun, right? Because, ancestry and research is fun. It's rewarding. It's a long, hard journey, but it is so much fun to find your ancestors. So we're going to have fun too.
Absolutely. I'm just so inspired by both of you. You have created careers and monumental work honoring your lineage, your home communities, and your own purpose and legacies. And I'm just so energized by that. So with that, we're going to get down in the documents. Some of us may be a little bit intimidated by that, but hopefully by the end, we will move beyond that. I want to also take the time, and we're going to start off by just having a moment of silence where we can hold in collective thought, collective emotion, and collective experience to honor those and to remember those who have been fighting for racial equity and those who have been victim of white supremacy. So we're going to take a moment here just to acknowledge the incredible grief that many of us have been feeling this week, and call on our ancestors and call on one of another that are here in this group to support us in this space. We're going to start off with this song.
So, so I want to sing this song to honor, Chadwick Boseman as an ancestor, as a new ancestor. Talking to many of my friends and colleagues and family, we've been talking about how this year has been a year. 2020 has been a year. We've got started with Kobe, and and here we are with Chadwick. So I'm going to sing this song. It's one of the honor songs that I learned when I was singing on Four Rivers drum. And our drum leader, Bob Jondro, he was very adamant about singing it correctly. So I will honor his memory as well, but for Chadwick and our ancestors. Eagle Calling song. Well, hey, 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 well, Megazi minoda, megazi minoda, wawi ba minoda, minoda, megazi minoda, megazi minoda. Wehaya, wehaya, wela, wehawe. And the way we normally do it is we sing it 4 times, or when we're powwowing, we'll sing it as many times as the people ask us to sing that song. But it's one of those, flag songs, eagle song, honoring songs. So I sing that in honor of our new ancestor, Chadwick Boseman. And again, welcome to everyone who's just joining us live, for Morning Coffee with myself and Nichelle are here and Karen, our guest today. We're here to talk about getting down in the records, so.
Thank you so much. You already got me crying starting off, but I feel that, and may that energy guide the honor of your work, the discussion, and the questions in the chat. We're going to save the last 30 minutes for the audience to ask their questions or to share some of their experience in their journey in this poetic work of uncovering our ancestors and illuminating what was not illuminated in the past. So with that being said, we're going to move into setting our intentions, and then we're going to go into our questions for the day. So just want to, Karen, you can actually unmute and join in with us. We like to set our intentions of what we hope to achieve in this space, so we can keep that in mind as we guide our discussion.
And can I say too, I'm going to tell my Instagram people, hi everybody, go over to I Love Ancestry on Facebook. and join in with our discussion, Facebook Live right now, because I'm not going to hold my chat my IG the entire time. This is going to be an amazing session with Karen White and Nichelle and myself about getting down in the records. All right, so go on over there, folks. I'm ending this.
You are awesome at doing both at the same time. I would have hung up on somebody. So if we could start off with our intentions, and Shonda, I don't know if you want to start off your intention, and then Karen, and then myself, and then we'll go into our questions.
Honoring my ancestors by discovering who they are. Honoring my ancestors, plural, by discovering who they are. That's my intention.
My intention is to preserve the history of the African-American presence in Fauquier County and in Virginia, and making it available to all.
Ashe. And my intention is to connect with both of you and connect with our audience and just be a conduit of information for everyone here. So thank you for that. So we're gonna go into our first question. So I'm gonna be directing these questions to both of you. So Shonda, you're gonna be, I guess, co-hosting and answering as expert as well. My first question is about starting that journey. Who were the family historians and the genealogists before you?
So I'll start really quickly because Karen, you have a wealth of information that we need to hear. So just really quickly, the genealogist before me and my family, if I'm looking at the direct lineage, it would have been my Aunt Irma, because my Aunt Irma became the keeper of the records from my Aunt Catherine, my great Aunt Catherine. And my great Aunt Catherine was the one who essentially wrote down all the names, the dates of birth and death, the gender, location, as much as she could remember, and then how they died. She said she did it for purposes of health, but I wonder if that was a bit of resistance in her, where she wrote everything down, but you couldn't say, because I wanted you to see that you were, you're Black and Indian, or I wanted you to see that you came from free people of color as well. That kind of pride is something that, like, is quiet, is kept at home. And then my aunt, because she knew I was interested in genealogy and research, gave the documents to me, and it was just, like the best gift of my life. And it's interesting because the picture that's on screen right now, the bottom left man is my great grandfather, Jason Stafford.
Wow.
Yeah, and the woman in the next to him in the middle, first row, is my great grandmother, Frances Caldonia Stafford. And those are their children behind them. But Frances Caldonia Stafford, I found her information, her name first before I had this picture. And again, this is a picture of something that I inherited from my aunt, my aunt. And so Frances Caldonia is the daughter of the daughter or granddaughter, I guess I could say, of one of the first men to settle, free people of color free person of color to settle Michigan, Willis Roberts.
Wow.
And then Willis Roberts is the son of one of the family, the Roberts family, who were the first free people of color to settle Indiana. So settle in Indiana, and so they've got the Roberts settlement and the Nettle Creek settlement. So there's tons of information there. So I inherited all of that, and I became the genealogist for my family, which is a rewarding journey.
That is incredible. When you first saw this photo, what was your feeling when you first saw that photo?
Sis, when I first saw that photo, I was like, why are they so mad? Why is everybody all angry? And I imagined like something, an altercation, something happening before the picture. But you could see, so the lore is that my grandfather, Jason, was just, kind of mean, and abusive to the one on the back, right behind Frances Caldonia. And so apparently she was the one who was always trying to protect him. So I was wondering if that was a bit of, what was happening in the family structure. So you get all of these stories, the stories become a part of that research and that genealogy. But when I first saw the picture, one, it was like, why are they so angry? And then two, it was like, I'm so grateful that at least I get to see what they look like.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of us don't have that, a lot of us don't have that ability.
That is a gift, and from that you've been able to create this incredible career, right? That the power of that. Can you give us around a time that this picture might have been a year taken?
Yeah. So this had to have been, if this is like the 1800s, if let's see, Frances came to her dad, Parker, was born in Michigan, and then she was born in Michigan as well. So this had to be like maybe late 1800s, because my grandfather was born in 1901 on December 31st. So that means that this was late 1800s, somewhere around there. So it could have been like 1890 or somewhere around there, and maybe, and so that would be my grandfather, the one in the middle, right behind his mom. That's my grandfather, Clifford.
Wow.
Clifford Stafford. Yeah. So yeah, and so my book, Black Indian, really talks about, ancestry, lineage, heritage, what it means to have, to find these families, to find the records, to put their stories back together again, where we forgot them, or we didn't even know those stories. And so a lot of my work and my research has been redemptive. You know, it's been about reclaiming those stories and that history and heritage. For me, of being bi and triracial, to what we claimed the African American and the American Indian, but also that free person of color, status.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And as we transition to Karen, I'm going to give them an opportunity to do so. I do want to plug that today Shonda is doing a giveaway for Black Indian. And so we'll get to that in the chat, and we'll keep you, so stay to 2 o'clock so you make sure you can try to win a copy of Black Indian. Is it a signed copy?
It will likely, because of the digital, the COVID piece, so it likely will be an unsigned copy.
Okay, understood.
Yeah. Well, so probably maybe we'll do something like the 50th listener or something like that, you know? So we need 50 people to be listening. So call your friends so you can win that copy of the book.
I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. Karen, and so same question, how did you really start your, not how did you start your journey, but who were the family historians and genealogists before you?
Well, for me, there were many from my mother's side as well as my father's side. For my mother's side, I have to start with Norman Grigsby, Juliet Grigsby Hughes, Lacey and Teresa O'Banion. And for my father's side, my aunts, uncles, cousins, and of course, on both sides, my parents and my grandparents. It was extremely fulfilling being able to reach out to so many people, and stories from each one developed into my story, my family story. And I can't claim one over the other as far as importance, because each one of them built on another.
Understood, understood.
And I'll discuss a little bit more of this as time goes on. But when I first started, it was Lacey O'Banion who told me of the slaveholder for the community in which I grew up. And it was her sister who told me where my third great grandmother was buried and how we were related. I got started because the picture you see right now, the three sisters, one is my grandmother. And I found a birth record, an abstract of birth records from Fauquier County that had two of my grandmother's sisters' births in it, listing their fathers and the birth date, but not of my grandmother. So I quickly had to learn that I needed to understand when and where and how to research, which I knew nothing. But I quickly learned that birth records in Virginia were recorded between 1853 and 1896, and then after 1912. My grandmother being born in 1897 would not have been in that record. So I say all of that to say that I located the book through mutual friends and relatives that I didn't know I was related to, that was a published work in the Library of Virginia at Prince William Library and a couple of other sites called the Black Laws of Virginia, which were the laws from the Acts to the General Assembly that had been abstracted out in 1936 by an attorney by the name of June Guild. That became my genealogical research Bible. I realized I needed to know the laws in order to know what documents were available to me and what they were actually talking about. So that became part of my foundation for research.
I'm so thankful. Oh, sorry, Shonda, did you want to?
No, I'm saying, yeah, no, I'm thankful and grateful as well, particularly for that resource. And I love how you said that became your Bible. For me, my Bible was Free People of Color in North Carolina and Virginia. And from that document, Paul Henig is the author of that. And his list of birth recordings, land deeds, court cases, all of those, and then pulling together the families that he saw whose ethnicity changed, depending on who was doing the recording. And so for me, Free People of Color became my in North Carolina and Virginia became my Bible. So I'm going to check that document out because I haven't used that one. I love that.
the neat thing about that particular book that you're mentioning, the Fords are listed in there, and I'm a Ford descendant as well. If we
Okay.
go back to my great-great-grandparents, I'm enriched by 16 different bloodlines, 8 from my father and 8 from my mother. So each time you go back, you'll find another branch of who you are.
Mhm.
So that part was very instrumental to me in realizing this particular part. So in Virginia, in Fauquier County, I can document those Fords back into the early 1700s.
Isn't that amazing?
Fauquier formed in 1759, and shortly thereafter, early 1800s, they're listed as free people of color.
Yeah.
Even though my great-great-grandfather shared the oral history of how it was to be enslaved, which led me to believe that there were little differences into the rights of an enslaved person and a free person of color. I might want to add also that Norman Grigsby left a genealogical chart that listed my great-great-grandfather's siblings that I knew absolutely nothing about. He told me where they were, and he also listed a slaveholder that I have not validated that particular slaveholder, but they were definitely here in Fauquier County. But Charlotte Grigsby Burke and John Grigsby were my great-great-grandfather's siblings. And having visited descendants of that family, I have found common photographs in each home. So with that, a lot of times just doing lateral lines, you'll find what one family member doesn't have, another branch will. So I encourage everyone to not to look beyond yourself and to look into the broader community and into the larger families and communities that are available.
I love that. And multiple, so I'm just going to piggyback off of that because when I was looking at the genealogy, the state census in Michigan, because the state census is different from the federal census, right? And
Mhm.
so when I was looking at the state census, I realized that even if I couldn't find an ancestor listed on a particular for a particular time, if I looked at the neighbors, and I could see how there was the neighbors, they like how can I say this? They lived in the same area, so it was almost like chess playing. Like sometimes somebody would move, and so if I would look for a neighbor, then I could find that ancestor. So it was like, oh, so this person moved, and then they dropped off the records for a moment, but let me find this other neighbor, and then they're back. So that was a really interesting thing for me. It was like just to kind of go to make sure that I combed the state census for my ancestors, even if I didn't find them in a particular place. Uh, and I also want to say that from that book, Free People of Color in Virginia, I was so blessed to find one of my greats who had fought in the American Revolution, and his widow is recorded as saying, even though at first he didn't get his pension, his war pension, and the widow was recorded in the document saying he fought with Cornwallis, and so eventually she got her pension.
Wow.
So yeah.
I want to stop here and just say you all have just given us a wealth of information just in question one. And so I want to make sure everyone is able to um, get their pen and paper out, like I said. So let's go back to the Black Laws of Virginia, which is our second giveaway today. So we have two giveaways. First, Black Indian, okay? Corona friendly because it's, it's not signed. And the second is that we're doing the Black Laws of Virginia from AAHA. Karen will be giving a copy of that. And going back to the Black Laws of Virginia, as Karen stated, for her, that has been a Bible in starting her on her research. So you definitely want to try to win that today. That's for one. And two, if you're not a winner, you want to go back and look for that as a resource. In my own personal journey, it seems that Virginia, of course, we know 1619, this large date in Black American history, many of us can hit Virginia at some point. And so we definitely want to check that connection. Second thing is I also want to just make sure for Fauquier County, many of you may not be familiar. Of course, it's a county in Virginia. It's about 50 or 60 miles, would you say, Karen,
Yes.
west of Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Geographically in the Virginia Piedmont, headed toward the Shenandoah. So if you ever heard of Shenandoah National Park, is getting close to that area. So, but headed from Washington, D.C. toward the Shenandoah, just to give everyone a reference point for where Fauquier County is. And then I want to make sure I get Shonda's Free People of Color of North Carolina. Is that correct?
Free People of Color in North Carolina and Virginia. He has 2 volumes of that book, and he also has another one for the Maryland area, and I forget the second state that he lists, but yeah.
Okay, so Free People of Color of North Carolina and Virginia. Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. All right, so make sure you have that. And then the point of not just looking at your own, I think sometimes I know in my search, I would sometimes just focus on my exact line. But really, as I think Karen and Shonda both said, looking at those lateral lines, looking at the sisters and brothers, right? As you do your genealogy research, and also the neighbors, as Shonda said, also the neighbors. So you have to use all, you're kind of like triangulating that information.
Families travel together. That's so interesting. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's a good framework. Families travel together. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go into the next question. When you started your journey, when you got that Bible, or you saw that picture and you started your journey, how did you think it was going to go? And then how did it turn out?
Karen, take that. That's a great question, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, basically, I was looking for something to do in my spare time. So I was doing my genealogy, and that led me to understand that that this history that I was uncovering was much larger than I. It was a shared history. It was shared with my siblings, my immediate family, and of course it grew beyond my immediate family. At the 80th birthday of a cousin, Julia Grigsby Hughes, when I sit in her backyard with Karen King Lavore, and we shared our common interest in genealogy. So we started tracing back our families together because we found that our ancestors were from the same family. And we walked back to about 1870 when my great-great-grandfather Brewster handed her great-great-grandfather Henry Welsh a recorded deed for property that he too had purchased from a slaveholder, William J. Morgan. And the community in which I grew up was called Morgantown. I grew up in this community. I played on this land. I walked to my grandmother's farm. I helped to gather eggs in the afternoon and round up the cows for milking in the evening. Now, I was young then. The photographs you're seeing is of my grandparents and great-grandparents, my aunts, my mother. This is on my mother's side. Karen grew up in Cleveland, but her family roots were in Fauquier, in this little community of Morgantown. But on summer breaks, she would come back with her family and go to the Miles house, her ancestor's home. And that was the ancestor that provided a spring that made water available to the segregated school that her great-grandfather taught and my great-grandmother taught. So we kept finding that we had these common threads of history. So with that, we decided that we needed to look beyond ourselves and maybe start preserving this history because it was fascinating. It was empowering, emboldening. So we started to talk to more and more people. And finally, we decided that we were going to start a little organization. And we wanted to branch off of the national chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, but we were not able to afford their membership and an individual membership to the local community. And our membership was only $2.50, where theirs were $15. So we knew we better stay with the $2.50. So we are the Afro-American Historical Association of Fauquier County. And we're basically trying to preserve as much history as possible and to make it available. And wherever that history is, you need to start, wherever you are, start there, and just keep it moving forward. The hobby of this history for Karen and I really led to the founding of the association. And today we have a resource center which houses a reference library, active research library for local history and genealogy, as well as a modest museum and an auditorium for programs. Our archives have grown tremendously. We opened in 1997, and we're still open, which is a testament to the amount of records and the amount of history that is here, and the wealth of information that is available for researching the African American presence.
Can I ask a question?
Of,
How many
of people
families?
that want to share and preserve their own family histories.
How
And
many
we do have
families
a
in
website.
your center?
Pardon me, Shonda?
How many families in your center? Like how many families are represented in the archives?
Now that I can't even answer, because let's say from 1820 to about 1860, Fauquier was 50% African American, 40% enslaved. By 1860, there were over 10,000 people here that were free or enslaved, people of color. So that will kind of give you an idea. And Fauquier formed in 1759. We are currently undertaking a project called Know Our Names. We are trying to document the names of every enslaved person in Fauquier County from its formation from 1759. Angela, one of the board members, and my sister has been abstracting the wills in Fauquier County. So she's been going through looking for free and enslaved people from Fauquier, and she has over 20,000 entries, and she's not finished yet. She's down to the S's. So it's fascinating. She's completed the births, deaths, and Norma is working on the titles and the deeds. So it's a lot of research and a lot of sources there. And we've been fortunate to work and be benefactors from other people that have abstracted and done a tremendous amount of work. Mentioned Deanne Buck, who is now deceased. She lived in Fairfax, but she did quite a few abstracts of birth, death, marriages, wills, and deeds from Fauquier County. So during the time of COVID, we were able to take those abstracts and those indexes and start pulling those names. My cousin Sandra Barlow, who grew in a different time frame, in a different space and place, who's done the wills trying to find her African American ancestor as to who exactly enslaved her. Because we are definitely a match, but we didn't grow up knowing that, knowing of each other.
Wow, that is such an amazing history. Oh my gosh. Thank you all for doing that work. That's ancestral work. That's amazing.
Incredible and prolific. I want to kind of go back. I want to plug the website for everybody so that if they are interested in learning more about AAHA, is AAHA Fauquier. Can you spell that? No, FAUQUIER. That's a difficult one, .org. Okay. They have digitized many of the photos, records. And so if you're not able to get to Fauquier, which is 50 miles west of Washington, D.C., on your way to the Shenandoah, you can stop by, then you can go online to their web presence. But the work is incredible. The amount of archiving that Karen White, Angela Davison or Davis?
Son.
Davison, and Norma
Logan.
Logan, which is my actual cousin. And I talk about that a little bit in my podcast. How I met Karen was actually because my family's roots are in Fauquier County, which I did not know until maybe about 4 years ago. And so I got very lucky that there was a Black historical society run by women as prolific as them to get me started on my journey, and been able to trace back to the late 1700s because of the work that they have done. And I tell that story in my podcast, Perpetual Blackness. But I was wondering if, before we move on, both of you use the word abstract. And if you're new to this work, you may not know what it means. This has been abstracted. Can you please share, Shonda or Karen, what does it mean when something is abstract, and how does that benefit us?
Karen, you can go ahead and share that part. For me, the abstract is it's a précis, or it's just like a illustration of larger information, but from the genealogy standpoint. Karen.
So if I go to the courthouse and I find that there's a 4-page will, I might want to read through that 4-page will, and I would abstract or take away parts of that information and put it into a condensed version of the original, versus transcribing a document, which is going word for word. So we have abstracts and we have transcriptions. But for the published work that we're working with right now, much of it is abstracts.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. So we kind of touched on, oh, Shonda, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about your journey.
Oh, so we talked about my journey, I think, on maybe part one, but I'll do a quick little mention for the people who are new to the channel, or new to us, Morning Coffee with. So my journey began when I was young, and literally with the words question to my mom was, "What are we?" And "Mama, do we have some Indian in us?" You know, and I talked about this in my book as well. And my mom basically said Blackfoot, and and I thought, okay. And then I was like, "What else?" And she said, "Well, you've got some French, some German, some Indian, and a little bit of Black." And she would always say it like that, a little bit of Black. But I would look at my dad, and my dad was Mississippi mud. You know, he was like from Oklahoma, Mississippi. And I'm like, how is that possible? So that was my first research question, really. You know, what are we? And from that, it became, where do we come from? And when I started really looking at the where do we come from, I was probably about 20. And I put all my family pictures together. As much little bit of information that I had from my mom, I just kind of jotted it down. I wrote it down, right? Because the first part of research is definitely asking questions of the people, the eldest people who are alive, interviewing your family members. That's like one of the first steps of your research, asking as many questions. And so I started asking questions of everybody between 20 and 25. And then I said, wait a minute, they don't have all the answers. Now let me go to the records, you know? And this is when I really started looking at, I think my first trip to the Kalamazoo Public Library, which is where my book is set, but my first trip to the Kalamazoo Public Library, to the records room. The records room was probably the most neglected room at that time. Like file cabinets were shoved up against each other, and I had to literally just like comb through stuff just to find my Staffords and my manuals and my Matthews, and just to like locate them. I happened to be lucky because I was just like really dogmatic, and I spent hours in that room, and so from there, when the Kalamazoo Public Library listed that the farm that my grandfather owned, that my mom was born on, that he had inherited that farm. No, rather, I'm so sorry, bought that farm for $1 from his brother's widow, because my grandmother, Frances Caldonia, who you saw in that picture, Frances Caldonia, Robert Stafford, left the land to her eldest son, but the eldest son died. And so somehow they had to get the land to my grandfather. But from there, I went to the Pawpaw, Michigan records room. And the first book that I saw was a huge book of the land deeds. And I had to go through, blow the dust off, go through the book.
Mm.
copy the records to the best of my ability. So that was my first, like, just kind of like, this is work. This is good work, and I'm finding things that people didn't know. Um, and so I think that was like my first journey, and just kind of I sunk my teeth into the feeling of there's more than what my immediate family knows about the past. And for me, finding the names, like tracing those families back, tracing where they lived, also looking at history and looking at what was happening in our country at that time period, I can surmise what their lives were like, you know, they have to go through. And so that fascinates me. So that's my beginning of the research journey.
That is beautiful and incredible. And I thank you for the imagery of like what it's like when you see those big books for the first time. Karen was the one that took me into the records room at the county court for the first time. I didn't even know that existed. So I'm like, oh my goodness, what are these uh, huge Bibles they look like? They're just these big books full of documents. I didn't even have a concept that they had been preserved in that way. So for those listening, you would be surprised of what documents do exist that have not been cataloged or organized and indexed like Karen has spoken about that they do at AAHA. So you can go to your family's county court and start to, I mean, the county court of your family's hometown and start that search there. I also
And,
just,
and
oh,
there are different languages. There are different ways of languaging it. So it's Hall of Records. Some people will call it the clerk or county registrars, or they'll call some people will call it say it like that. Karen, maybe some of the different names. But whenever the word clerk county registrars became a part of my lexicon, I was like, okay, they have the information that I need, or at least they can point me in the right direction. Karen, I don't know, is that
It's the
for you?
clerk of the circuit court here. And the Library
Okay.
of Virginia is the overseer of all of the county records throughout the Commonwealth, and they're located in Richmond, Virginia. Their website will hold a wealth of information for genealogists. And I would recommend their chancery suits because they are microfilmed and available. So you can sit at home during this time of COVID and look at all of the suits.
and I think I ask you this question every time I speak to you, Karen. Can you tell us what a chancery suit is for the 100th time for me?
It's a superior court record. It's a suit of equity. Um, let's say someone records a will and someone contests that will, it's going to go into the court of chancery. Divorces are recorded in the court of chancery as well as adoptions.
All right, so this is where you get the juicy stuff is in the chancery
Oh
suit.
yeah, you have lots of information within the chancery suits. They hold so much. There will be a bill of complaint, an answer, a commissioner's report. You may find a plat. You may find will, depositions. You may find sales of people, values of people. So people of color, free and enslaved, are going to be in your chancery suits. And the best thing is when you pick up a deposition and it's in their own words, it's their affidavit and testimony. That's the greatest resource you can find is any documents where that person is giving their own story.
Absolutely. Okay, so chancery suits, just to repeat that for everybody. And we had some different language given by Shonda and Karen about where you can go. Clerk of the Circuit Court. If you have some Virginia roots, the Virginia Library, is that right? Library of Virginia is the
Yes.
overseer of them all, located in Richmond, Virginia. But you can get online and read through the juicy details of the chancery suits while you're home right now during the
The
quarantine.
other, Nichelle, if I may interject here, at the Library of Virginia, they're also doing Virginia Untold, the African American narratives, and they're pulling records from various types of records that they house there. And most of those same records are records that we house here, because we were fortunate enough to work on a grant to preserve Fauquier County's early records. And we were supposed to flat file the chancery suits. And with that, one record series was called Free Negro and Slave. So that is comprised of every record series that's contained within the court records. So we have a sampling of all of the record types, which will give, if you really go through all of them, it will kind of give you a history of the law being carried out or being enforced, and those that were not enforced in the county.
Can I ask you a question? Because that's leading us into our next question, looking at the documents. My question is, what are some of the key documents that get people started on their journey? Karen, just for some clarification, did you want to share some of the documents here?
If you can just scroll those, I will talk about the different things that are available, and I'll just do a quick thing.
Perfect, okay.
As Shonda has said, the first thing you want to do is you want to get your oral histories. You want to talk to the family members, and you want to ransack that house, so to say. You want to look at any Bible records and old books that are within the houses, because sometimes people recorded birth, death, marriages in family Bibles or in other old books that meant something to family members. You want to look for family keepsakes, such as your church bulletins, family letters, obituaries, cards, awards, certificates. And then from that point, you want to look at what's available quick and easy. You want to go to Ancestry and look at your census records. Now, when I started, I had to go to the library and do that big roll of film, nothing indexed, quite hard to print, but we did it. And you want to look at your local records, such as your church records. They will contain minutes, rolls, which are going to give references to baptisms, letter of exclusions. And you want to not only look at Black churches, you want to look at white churches, because Blacks held membership at local white churches. And they're going to give information for as being excluded for being disobedient, and given letters when they're being sold down south. It's a lot of information, and it also gives a name, usually just a given name if they were enslaved, whereas if they were free, you have a first and a last name. You want to look at your local newspapers, and those newspapers contain various things, a lot of which is going to be runaway advertisements or hires where people are looking to hire enslaved people out. And the school records, you're going to look at the superintendent's reports, teachers contracted to teach, student census. And the libraries, each library usually has a room where they are dedicated more to the local history section of it. So they're going to have local manuscripts, guidebooks, abstracts, and things of that nature. And then the wealth of your information is going to come from your county records. In the county records, you're going to look at your vital records, birth, death, marriages. And you have to find out what time frames that your county record those records, and where are they housed, and are they open to the public? What time frame is considered okay to see those records? Your probate records or fiduciary, that will be your wills, inventories, appraisals, divisions, dowry allotments, and accounts. Tax and fiscal, your titleables. And titleables is prior to the American Revolution. That's the taxes. And we were taxable for those slave holders that held us in bondage.
Wow.
We were a certain age. And at one point, the women were not, but then all of a sudden, people were going to go put more women to work, so they ended up taxing them too. So that you have first names of people that were enslaved that people were paying taxes on. Personal property list, delinquent tax list, insolvent list. Military records, where most, at one point you can find more in the record room, but now on fold 3, you can find pension applications. records pertaining to the USCT, selective service records, honor rolls, inductions, and discharge records, all of which are very beneficial, but you can also find the Southern claims for those Southern states that, for the people in the Southern states that remained loyal to the Union during the Civil War, where they lost property to benefit the Union. They could be reimbursed. You'll also find the land records, which Chandra had mentioned about those big deed books. All of the books at the circuit court are big and they're heavy. And some of them go all the way down to the floor. But
Wow.
in those books, you're going to find emancipations, you're going to find deeds of trust, where we were put up as collateral for various things, for buying property and things of that nature. You're going to find bill of sales, deed of gifts, certificates of freedom or passes, affidavits of a fugitive slave, where someone has ran away and somebody wants to make sure that if it's found, it's my property, I want them back.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, importation into the Commonwealth, because after a period of time, they were not supposed to come straight from Africa. And if you're bringing somebody into the Commonwealth, you had to say how you had them, when you received them, and why you're bringing them in. And there will be a listing of names. Then when you get into the minute order book, that's when you really see the laws. You see the overseers of the poor, which is after the American Revolution, when the church wardens were backing up far as taking care of the poor. Then the overseers were appointed to take care of the poor. So you're going to see indentures, you're going to see accounts, you're going to see reports. There are medical records such as lunacy and coroner's inquest, and the causes, which are detainees or unjust detainers, hire contracts, ownerships of slaves, breach of contract, treatment of slaves, petitions to remain in the Commonwealth, minister's license. And then you have a lot of county claims from the overseers of the poor for admitting a person to the poorhouse, for making coffins, deaths and discharges, as well as digging graves. Sheriff's records, where they're charging reimbursement for feeding, clothing, keeping, selling, and advertising people.
That is
And of
amazing.
course, the patroller accounts, whose hours they're going to charge for the hours that they patrol the goings and comings of free Negro and enslaved at the quarters, and the log of plantation findings. And then, of course, you have the Commonwealth causes and grand jury indictments, which are your cohabitation records, suits where people were cohabitating illegally, unlawful assembly, migration into the Commonwealth, administering medicine, hiring, going at large. There was so much control over the everyday life of free and enslaved people of color, and it transcends to today.
That is so true. That is so true. I want to add something to it. The bonding piece, where if you had married illegally, so if a white man married a black woman, or an indentured servant white woman had a child with a black man, that child could be taken and bonded out. And so those records could be, to be listed there as well. And so that's a language that you will come across when you're researching your family, bonded out. And so you'll, now you know what that means,
Yeah.
that someone could take your child. Indentured servants. So to my understanding, when the first 20 Africans or Angolans were on that 1619 ship coming to Jamestown, Virginia, they were sold, they were traded for goods, but then they were on the ships as slaves, but they could be baptized out of slavery and become indentured servants. That was one of my understandings. Correct me if I'm wrong. So sometimes Black people could be listed as an indentured servant as well until the institution of slavery, until it became an actual institution with the enslavement of those two Black men who they said you will serve for the rest of your natural born life. And forgive me, those ancestors, I can't remember their names.
That's
So
going
that's another, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
by 1662, the institution of slavery became a way of life with the laws that were passed that all children of people of color were going to be based on the status of the mother
Of
when
the
they
mother.
gave birth to them, and it would be a lifetime of slavery.
Permanent slave labor.
Yes.
Permanent slave labor. So that's, so yeah. Another term that people will come across when they're researching that the Black Indian or the Indian ancestry is other. So for a period of time, when they first started recording in the state and federal documents, they would record white man, Negro. Maybe you would see a word Indian up until a certain point, and then there's a swath of period where you see other, other, other. And generally, the others will be American Indians who could be owned as slaves, who no longer had an actual status. And please, again, correct me, Karen, but they didn't have an actual ethnicity listed on the books because they were trying to take their lands. And so if you weren't listed on the books, then technically you didn't exist. If
Mhm.
you if you weren't called Tuscarora or Nottoway, I'm looking at the North Carolina and Virginia Indians. If they didn't give you your tribal name, you didn't exist. So 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 pay attention to the term other when you're looking at your ancestry as well.
Not only other, but mulattoes.
Mulatto
Um,
and
yeah.
mulatto. Mm-hmm.
Here in Virginia, when I first started doing my genealogy, I spoke with a couple of local historians, one in particular, which I always hold in high regard because I was but a, a baby in diapers when he was donating different things to the Library of Virginia. But he told me that when Fauquier formed in 1759, there were no native people here. They had already moved down towards Fredericksburg and Stafford, doing the trading post down in that area. When I was working on that grant in 1759, starting with 1995, looking at the records dating back to 1759, I found a 1795 suit pertaining to a man by the name of Caesar, who was filing for his freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason he felt that he was entitled to his freedom is because he said that he was the son of Indian Jenny. And that suit went all the way back into Prince William because Fauquier formed from Prince William. So you had in 1759 a man by the name of Caesar who's saying that he is the son of Indian Jenny. And then I found additional affidavits and testimonies where the daughter of the slaveholder said, "Oh, yes, my father knew it and everyone around knew it." And in fact, Jenny was the daughter of Indian Mall. So these are the types of things that you will uncover from different times. If you look at the middle way of the document, and the reason these people were being enslaved and listed as Negro is because by Virginia law, after a period of time, Native Americans were no longer supposed to be treated as enslaved people. So if they erase their identity and put them as mulatto and Negro, they could continue to enslave them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I see the two documents referring back to what you were speaking of. Can you just, below it says the Commonwealth of Virginia, you could just let us know again what.
Sheriff of Prince William County, greetings. You are hereby commanded to summons Helen Bullitt, uh, William Lynn, and Rachel Hewitt to appear before the Justice of the County of Fauquier at the court here of such the 3rd day of August next on behalf of Caesar, a Negro, Caesar
Mm,
plaintiff, and Thomas Hutton and Alexander Scott defendant. And this is 28th day of July, and I think that's 1795.
okay.
And then the next one is Helen Bullitt's testimony. That was the other document, where halfway down, she is testifying to that. That said that Jenny was as free as he, or this the disponent, and that he has heard his mother say that the fourth Jenny was the daughter of an Indian woman named Maul.
Mm.
That's the third line from the bottom. Freedom.
Okay.
And I think he was awarded 1 penny for damages.
My goodness.
And if I could ask Shonda, is this what we referred to in the past as that paper genocide?
Yes. Yes. I mean, paper genocide. If you can obfuscate, that's the lawyer's word, but hide the ethnicity of the indigenous people, and those indigenous people said, this has been my ancestors' land for these many generations, even though they can't write, right? Because a lot of them, I'm sorry, forgive me, they weren't writing in English, which is another piece of paper genocide. So if suddenly they don't have a tribal claim to that land, they don't even have a name for the, rather, the Europeans have said, we're not even going to count you in our county records. We're not even counting you because, you know, we don't even know if you own that land. We don't see any records that you own that land. And suddenly it's like, well, you don't, maybe you don't even exist. Maybe you don't even have, maybe that's not even your own tribal
Over the
name.
years, I've found references to Native people here in the 1860 U.S. slave schedule. We found a reference to a person that was enslaved. Of course, in the 1860 slave schedule, they're not listed their names, only age and their sex. And off in the side column, it's Indian
Yes,
breed
yes, yes.
for this one particular boy. Lydia Cole in the 1890 land tax records, again in the margin, Native
Right.
American.
And
Mm.
then when they were bushwhacking too,
So,
like bushwhackers could go and just take a, it's like, say the Indian is, she's washing her clothes, or the kids are, doing whatever, and a bushwhacker comes and see they look quote unquote dark skinned, or even, maybe they don't even look dark skinned, and just takes them and sells them. And suddenly they become Negro.
one of the things that I found here in the Free Negro Register, well, commenced in 1793, every person that was free, in order to move from one place to another, or even to be able to hire yourself out, you had to register every 3 years into a book called the Free Negro Register.
Mm.
Fauquier's was down at the Library of Virginia, at the Virginia Historical Society, and not in Fauquier County's record room. Um, but they give a description, a age, a color. And I'm finding that many are referring to Native people as yellow. So that
Mm-hmm.
is going to be very interesting now, over the years from researching for so long, for me to go back through the Free Negro Register and look to see those people that are listed as yellow. Because I've found different people over the years when they're referencing locally people with Native descent as yellow, as their coloring as yellow.
Isn't
That
that
is
interesting?
that is so. I mean,
It's revelatory.
have really illuminated. First, if I could go back to the documents that both of you have shared, I think for those of us who are listening and learning, you can start to see that there are a lot of spaces that you can actually begin to look. I mean, there are a lot of spaces you can begin to look. So I think one thing that kind of bothers me is when people say, oh, we don't have a history, we don't have a past. That's clearly not the case. Not that it has to be written to be justified. Let's be clear about that. But
Yeah.
at the same time, there are so many spaces that you can begin to look, and Karen and Shonda have shared a wealth. This will be posted so you can go back and you can, if you didn't write it down, you could go back. I was writing it down. I'll probably ask Karen 27 million more times, and Shonda as well. You can go back and you can write it down. I think we have space to grow with this, and I would really like to see a part 4 where we come back and actually do a work session with those documents. Maybe down to the documents has to be the next session as well. So I'm putting that out there because I think many people will have questions. I do want to have time for questions. And Shonda and I both want to be able to see what's going on in the chat box. And
Can I also say one
oh, go
thing
ahead.
too? So in November, I did a genealogy workshop, just, finding your Black Indian ancestry and heritage, like a month and a half ago, and I'll probably do another one in November. So I'll talk a little bit more about that too. But I think a lot of the resources that I use are similar to Karen's, but I'm definitely focusing on that lineage of, when an ethnicity changes back and forth throughout the 10-year period of the federal census, U.S. Census. So just to say that, yes, let's do a part 4, but I'm also going to do a workshop as well. Okay.
Excellent. No, that is wonderful, because we know that this type of work, as you can see, both of them have built careers and institutions out of this work. And I think that's one of the things that most inspires me, is taking your personal and then taking it public. And I wanted to just connect quickly to the Free Negro Register. If you listen to my podcast, I talk about it in episode 2, the Free Negro Register, and finding my own relative in that, and how that illuminates, because you get an idea of what the person looks like, and where they may have been. And that is something so sacred that you can keep with you and in your journey, an image that at a time when there were no images. So I do want to go to the chat box, and let's see here.
One question says, how finding neighbors can help find family. So I don't know if that's an actual question, but Karen, do you want to answer that? How finding neighbors can help find family?
Really, once you find your neighbors, people had large number of children, and many times children was hired out or loaned out or lived with neighbors and other relatives. So you have to look at the surrounding areas. I would advise everyone to really look at the 1870 census. If you find a relative in 1870, you need to go 3 and 4 pages forward and backward and look at every person there and document those people that are nearby. If your family were fortunate enough to acquire land, see who they acquired it from and research that person. Many times that gives you lots of leads. If you look at the Freedmen's Bureau papers, there are labor contracts after the institution of slavery where people were now going to go in contract for labor, and they're going to have to pay these people for their work. So with that, you're following people and the migrations and things of that nature. But neighbors will assist always. That's neighbors and family members. And you have to look for variations in spellings all the time. And if there is a person with a common name versus a name that's not quite as common, try the uncommon name to search for. Because that way you
Uh-oh.
There's also Quaker documents. The Quakers, Karen, are you back?
What did that blink out?
Yeah, you dropped out for a quick minute.
Okay.
Oh, so there were some sympathetic Quakers, abolitionist Quakers, and so some historically Quakers did own slaves for a period of time, but they broke off. So there's a section of Quakers who decided we do not want to own slaves. So sometimes free people of color would attend the Quaker churches. They could be listed there as well. So pay attention to any references of Quakers that are neighbors, because some free people of color would live close to Quakers because the Quakers could trade with white people. And so they were trying to establish their own settlement. If the Quakers traded with white people and they got goods or whatever, the Quakers could trade with the free people of color. So pay attention to the Quaker migration as well.
Excellent. Excellent. I think we have another question, and I think it's regarding maybe could we is lateral family lines. So I may need a clarification exactly what lateral family lines is.
For me, the way I use it, and maybe incorrect, but I use it in the sense that it's not my direct line. It may be my father's siblings line or my grandmother's siblings. The branches are downward from her siblings. For a perfect example, my dad's first cousin, I knew the names of ancestors on my daddy's side, such as Gillis and Wanzer, the Gaskins, Robert Gaskins and his daughter Annie, um, but I'd never seen photographs of them. We had a program here where we were collecting charcoal galleries, and daddy's first cousin Annie walks in with these huge charcoal pictures of my ancestors. So now all of a sudden, I can see photographs, I can see charcoal drawings of these people. So you have to look beyond what's within your immediate reach. You have to go a little bit further to find these things. When I went down to descendants of some of the other Grigsbys, when I met Victoria Price, who's descendant off of Bristol's brother's line, her photographs. So it's different stories that is very helpful. So it's not your immediate line, but it's the branches of your lines. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
No, you're good. Did you want to take the next one, Shonda, or?
What did it say? Something I'm not quite sure. It says, "Did this happen in Maryland?" And I'm not quite sure what they mean by the this. And then what's that? The Yakomiko disappeared. I think something faces the same fate as other Virginia and
Mm,
North Carolina reclassified, captured, something like that. So I'm not sure. Yes, I will say that I believe what they're asking is, did this uh, I don't know, the taking or the changing of ethnicity happen in Maryland as well?
I think
And
that's the
happened,
question. Yes.
I think that's
yeah,
throughout America.
yeah,
Mhm.
throughout America,
You
yeah.
had the
Um,
Indian Removal Act and the Trail of Tears and the five civilized, quote unquote, civilized tribes, but left behind were different individuals.
yeah,
Um,
no,
I've been fortunate enough to have met James Nickens over the years. And of course, the Nickens were in Fauquier County in the 1700s, listed as free people out of Lancaster County. And of course, the Nickens and the Penns are said to be native descendants.
Mm.
So we found a 1793 marriage of a Timbers and a Nickens that are marrying here in Fauquier County, and that someone had to certify that they were able to marry because they were both considered free people of color
that's
or the
amazing.
same everything. But yes, that they merged into a different population
Yeah,
group.
yeah, across the country. I'm so glad you said that.
Hmm.
You reminded me of something that I found when I was doing my research. County lines changed. County
Yeah.
lines were redrawn depending on, I guess we go back to, what is that called? The creation of a district, that kind of a thing, for a voting
Hmm.
population or a voting block.
Hmm.
So for example, in Virginia, it shares that county line with Elizabeth County, but it changed several times, and so I found myself looking for an ancestor in Virginia, Elizabeth County, but that line had changed, so I had to actually go to the North Carolina records to find that ancestor. So you have to really pay attention to how the county lines have been drawn and redrawn, particularly between South Carolina and North Carolina too, because the
Mm.
first lines were drawn incorrectly, and the fact who did it, they blamed him, and they were like, you did it wrong. I guess he was trying to go look at the, but not talk about the reservation of the Catawba Indians. And so he was trying to do draw a line based off of that reservation, but not mention them. So, so you have to pay attention to that as well.
That's an excellent tip. Excellent tip.
Another
that the counties change. Yes, we have another question. Someone is looking for the enslaver of a Thomas Shaw, I assume enslaved, and they can't find pension records for Thomas. Where else could they find this information? So perhaps another place to look for pension records? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I also like the National Archives. I do like that you can, actually walk into the National Archives if you have time to do that, or you can go online. I posted a link to the Freedmen's Bureau website, the Freedmen's Bureau. So they have tons of resources there with regards to trying to find, a person with a pension record who could have fought in the Union, or the other side. And then also check the Free People of Color in North Carolina and Virginia, and then the resource that Karen mentioned as well, because, look for the Shaw name, and then also look for the Shaw relatives. So that's my short answer.
Okay, great. We have
Karen,
another.
did you want to... Oh,
that's okay. I think she's reading that next question that is coming in, statement and question. So there are often names in numerous parts of my family line where we'll have a first name and sometimes first and last name followed by Indian. This has made it difficult to learn any of my tribal lineage. We have uncovered common last names to the Rappahannock tribe, but would love to dig further. Any advice on digging further there?
I always like to go directly to the tribes themselves. so go to the Rappahannock and ask them, what are some records that you have who list, this family, this is my family. So the Rappahannock, they are a Virginia tribe. Supposedly the Rappahannock is the one of the, well, the Powhatan Nation is blanking on Pocahontas. So Powhatan Nation, she was the daughter of a Pocahontas chief, but the Rappahannock are maybe possibly connected to Pocahontas as well. But so I would go to the Rappahannock tribe. I would ask them. I would go to other nations around the Rappahannock, like the Monacan. There are other nations, and just kind of ask around and say, hey, this is the last name of, my family members. Do you know anybody who's related to them? Sometimes you might even need to show up to the actual powwows themselves and go and talk to the vendors, because usually half of the vendors at a powwow could be blood related, or they could be related to that tribe, and the other half of vendors might just be from a different nation or different tribe that is selling things at that powwow. But when you show up to certain ceremonies like powwows or green corn stomp dances, sometimes you might find your relatives. You just never know. So that's my answer for the Rappahannock piece. And then of course, get into those county records. Look at the, go to the Hall of Records, go to the, the clerk offices, and try to find the names of your people, your ancestors.
Excellent.
Do you want to add something to that, Karen?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have another question, and I think I'm going to take your question. I'm going to add on to it because this is something I think would benefit people also in other states that might be watching. So the question is there a Free People of Color book for Maryland as well? And then I'm going to add on, or any other states that you know of.
For me, the Free People of Color book, he has 2 volumes of the North Carolina and Virginia one, which is really fascinating because there's different information in both of those books. But he does have one for Maryland as well. And I did drop a link in our chat session to his online, the online link for the book itself, and tons of resources within that one. And then there was something else with regards to the Maryland area, and I'm blanking on it now. And I think that the museum, what is it, the Anacostia Museum, I think they also might have a set of archives in Maryland.
Yeah, that would be right in Washington D.C. in Southeast, so right across that Maryland line. The Anacostia Museum. I don't remember the full name. Maybe Karen knows the full name. No, okay, yeah, the Anacostia Museum.
That in the Maryland State Archives.
And the Maryland State Archives. Okay, perfect. And so we're getting a little bit close to our wrap up time. And I want to honor these giveaways that we got going on here. So let's start here first with, we have two giveaways today. We have Black Indian and we have the Black Laws of Virginia that will be giveaways. And so how we're gonna do this is, I want you all to think of the eldest member living in your family. So take a second. We're gonna honor them. And in 2 seconds, we're gonna do a waterfall. You're just gonna put that name in the chat and we're gonna honor all of those historians. They are the ones who have lived through many seasons and have much to offer us. And so we're going to take this time to honor them now. So on the count of 3, I want everyone to put in that chat their oldest living family member. 1, 2, 3.
Beautiful. I love it. I love that. We're getting like a lot of names in the Facebook Live.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So think about them in your journey. They are your historians. They are our connections. We're going to choose 2 names and we're going to offer our giveaways. And then we're going to give you some ways to connect to us once this particular knowledge sharing is done. And so we're going to choose 2 names and they will receive our giveaways for today. Until the next time, because we will see you next time. This has been beautiful. I think I must have done something very good in my life to encounter both Karen White and Shonda Buchanan. I really, really mean that from the deepest part of my heart. You all are blessings and I really very, very much thank you. And I also want to thank everyone who has joined us. And like I said, we're gonna share some ways to connect. I don't know, Shonda, did you want to say anything? Or Karen?
Oh, so my website is shondabuchanan.com. My Instagram is, of course, at shondabuchanan.com, and the Twitter is the same. And I'm happy to connect with anyone around writing as well, writing and ancestry. Over the summer, I had time to actually conduct a couple of memoir and poetry workshops. So maybe in November, that'll be something else that I do, but I'm doing a lot of talks. I'm doing a lot of, readings. And so I guess if anyone wants me to do a reading from my book, Black Indian, I'm happy to do an online reading session since I'm not traveling this fall. Thank you, Nichelle, for being a fantastic host of the show and your amazing questions. This has been great. Karen, oh my God, your information. I'm just like, I just want to sit at your feet and just learn.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you both. This was an honor to be in your presence here today. And thank everyone for listening in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for all the listeners. Oh, and to Ancestry and to Mother Earth Sanctuary, you guys, without you all, we wouldn't have been able to do this technical, the technical part.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to run through the our social media handles, and we're going to announce the winner at the actual, soon as the moment I finish saying the handles. So Shonda Buchanan, you can reach on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Shonda Buchanan. Go ahead and follow her now. Me, Nichelle Calhoun, you can reach me at Perpetual Blackness on my website, perpetualblackness.com. And actually, I'm going to put a link, please, everybody. My podcast is Perpetual Blackness. It is through AAHA, and I touch on parts of this free Negro register and some of the documents and my own personal journey connecting to my family from Fredericksburg, Virginia, up to Fauquier County and to Washington, D.C. I love Ancestry. That is the platform where you are joining us and learning about Afro Native Black communities and Native intersections. And Mother Earth Sanctuary, Instagram is Mother M_Earth_ Sanctuary. You have the information there. And of course, Karen White from AAHA Fauquier is Facebook, and their website is aahafauquier.org. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Karen and Shonda, for your incredible knowledge. I am so thankful to learn from you, and we're going to honor our two winners. And I just love the way that this is placed. Thank you, Danica. Descendant of Georgia May Exum.
Hey.
They are the winner of Black Indian.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Exum. Where is this Exum from? My first grade teacher was Mr. Exum from New York.
So we're going
to it's a fine family.
Excellent. Thank you for getting my pronunciation right. So we're going to answer that question because that was your first grade teacher, right? All right. So descendant of Georgia May Exum, and we're looking for that connection. Where are they from? And then for the Black Laws of Virginia, our winner is the descendant of Aunt Geneva Griffith Blackburn.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So here's what you're going to do. To receive your giveaways, you're going to send I Love Ancestry a message. And we will follow up with you. I thank you. We thank you for your presence.
Yeah. And our next one will be the last Sunday of the month, right? Last Sunday?
September 30th. Join us.
September 30th. Put that in your calendars, people. 10 a.m. Pacific Coast time, 1 p.m. East Coast time, and bring your coffee and your tea. And I'm hoping, I love scheduling, our guests, but maybe Lonnie Harrington will come on. That would be awesome to have him as our next guest. We'll talk about that. And thank you for watching, Lonnie. I see that you're on here. So thank you.
Thank you. And everybody, go to Perpetual Blackness and subscribe. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. Thank you.
I love it. Have a great day, everyone.
Are we not live?
All right, everybody.
You guys rocked it. Oh, what happened to Karen?
We rocked it. Oh, she probably logged off. She thought